Welcome to U.S. Defense Line Channel. There was a first in the war between Ukraine and Russia. While Russia suffers great losses both on land and in the air, this time it begins to suffer losses at sea. Signals are being given that the biggest operations ever will take place on the southern front. After the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, knew that there was good news with critical statements about the situation in the south, explosions came one after another in key areas in the south. In Kherson, one of the key areas, the violence of mutual attacks is increasing. Moreover, it is known that not only Russian soldiers but also Chechen soldiers suffered great losses against the Ukrainian army in the region. Powerful explosions were also reported at a Russian military base in the area. Sounds of explosions echoed in Crimea, one of the most important regions with a key value in the south. According to breaking news, explosions occurred in the heart of Crimea. It is reported that the Ukrainian army hit the Russian naval base in the Sevastopol region. It is even stated that this military naval base and Russian ships were hit by unmanned naval vehicles. This is the first time these unmanned naval vehicles have been actively used in a combat environment with success. Moreover, according to the images obtained from this unmanned sea vehicle, as a result of the attack, the flagship of Russia's critically important Russian Black Sea Fleet, Admiral Makarov, and the minesweeper were seriously damaged. In addition, according to another claim, ships of Russia's Black Sea Fleet repelled a drone attack in Sevastopol. Moreover, it was reported that the ferry services in the region were stopped in order to ensure that these unmanned aerial vehicles were neutralized. Kerch Bridge in Crimea, which is actively used by the Russian army, was seriously damaged by Ukraine and rendered unusable. Thereupon, the Russian military convoys formed a long queue on the bridge that fell into a single lane, and the logistics flow had to be severely reduced. In fact, Russia continued to provide a limited supply flow with ferries as a remedy for this situation. However, as seen in the breaking news, it may be aimed to completely cut off the flow of military equipment from Russia from the region. Moreover, it is stated that this critical ferry crossing for Russia in Sevastopol connects to both the north and the south. This will play an important role in providing an advantage in favor of Ukraine, especially in the operations carried out on the southern front. Because Russia's armies fighting in the south, which cannot provide various supply flows, will both experience a decrease in motivation, and unless they can reach sufficient equipment, they will not be able to reach sufficient strength in the field of attack and defense, and will be subject to defeats. Moreover, the signals that Russia has suffered major defeats are not limited to the southern front either. Operations launched on the Eastern Front, which is of key importance for the countries, continue without slowing down. The fact that the Donbass in the east, namely Donetsk and Luhansk regions, are of critical importance for both countries causes an increase in violence in the struggles for the regions. In both regions, Russian troops suffered great losses in many areas and were forced to retreat. After the critical areas recaptured in Donetsk, defense areas have started to be built in the regions, and the necessary measures continue to be taken. It has even been reported that a group of 300 Russian soldiers preparing to attack near the Mayorsk region on this front was neutralized. Ukraine knows no barriers. In another critical region, Luhansk, it was reported that artillery units belonging to the Ukrainian forces carried out a strong attack in the Chervenopivka region. With the right move, 50 Russian soldiers were neutralized even in just one area. Russia's losses are becoming irreversible and irreparable. Solutions are running out in Moscow. Luhansk region was barely controlled by Russia months ago after months of struggle. Ukrainian army, on the other hand, started to take back the areas on the front one by one, even in just a few days. This situation is increasing the tension in Moscow even more. At the same time, the regions are retaken by Ukrainian troops, while many critical points in the regions, such as Russian ammunition storage points, equipment, and barracks, continue to be destroyed. This situation seriously reduces Russia's offensive and defensive power in the region. Russian army, whose problems on these issues were increasing, started to have more and more difficulties in the regions. If a solution cannot be found for these difficulties, the Russian troops will have to withdraw completely from the front or suffer losses. Realization of this situation will become one of Russia's greatest defeats. Mutual attacks on the Bakhmut front in the east increase their violence. Tanks, warplanes, various heavy weapons, and artillery systems are also used intensively in mutual conflicts. In particular, it was reported that the Ukrainian artillery batteries were actively operating in the region. With the increasing attacks in recent days, the Ukrainian army is on duty 24 hours a day with its artillery units, trying to push back the Russian troops in the region. Ukrainian artillery units deployed in the region continue their intense firing at the critical points of the Russian troops. Units, which are having difficulties due to the terrain conditions of the front line, are firing throughout the day, especially with howitzers and multiple rocket launchers. Senior officials, together with their critical statements, state that the shootings of these artillery systems, which are actively used in the Ukraine-Russia war, are of critical importance in the war and are the most important power of the war. At the same time, it was reported that the warplanes of the Ukrainian army at the front made low flights, shooting at the critical points of the Russian troops, and the sounds of the explosions increased. Russia suffers great losses by being exposed to these halos. Increasing losses can also make major defeats inevitable. Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine also made critical statements. Russia had declared a partial mobilization in the country due to the increase in the lack of military resources. However, as we know, this situation did not contribute to reaching a solution on the Russian side. Valery Zaluzhny, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, stated that although Russia has superiority in the number of weapons and soldiers, it continues to suffer major defeats in the war. He also added that the Russian forces were not successful on the battlefield because, as is known, the mobilized soldiers were both inadequately equipped and had a hard time in the regions where the war was intense due to the lack of training. These forced soldiers either surrendered or suffered losses and had to retreat. This situation caused even more losses on behalf of Russia. Ukrainian troops also continued to protect their borders. Russian troops were not allowed to use drones for reconnaissance and attack in the border area. Unmanned aerial vehicle used was downed by the border guards and rendered ineffective. Russian troops also used unmanned aerial vehicles to find out the positions of critical routes to areas. However, the Ukrainian border guards neutralized these attempts of the Russian army with a quick move, causing Russia's plans to be disrupted. Another attempt of Russia, which took action in various directions and tried to weaken the Ukrainian troops, ended in failure. If these unsuccessful methods and attempts continue, tensions will rise in Moscow. Because, as it is known, the failure of all kinds of moves of Russia causes the resources to start to deplete on behalf of the country. This, in turn, is gradually reducing the variety of military equipment they have in order to try new ways. In the long run, Russia's only solution now may be to withdraw from the war. It is also wondered what steps Russia can take, which cannot cope with its increasing loss day by day and cannot complete its deficiencies for various reasons. However, as we can see from the breaking news, the soldiers and equipment that Russia lost at various points reach a more critical level. Ukraine, on the other hand, is pushing the Russian troops into a corner by increasing its critical moves. If the right moves and steady progress are maintained, the Ukrainian soldiers will gain the upper hand in the war with strong motivation and strong moves. This, in turn, could ensure that Ukrainian lands are completely cleared of Russian soldiers over time. For this, if Ukraine is to achieve significant success in this war, the promises of support given by the countries must be kept and accelerated. Because, as it is known, all kinds of aid from countries have a critical importance in the course of the war. We saw this with Ukraine's effective use of military equipment from other countries during the war. Every step taken now must be taken in line with much more strategic plans. Otherwise, the country opposing the wrongdoing party will turn it into an advantage. We will see together how the war will take shape in the future. We'll see what happens in the next few days. We have reached the end of another video. You can support us by liking the video. You can easily follow new videos by subscribing. I wish you all a war-free day. See you.